Hello everyone, this is Devin Thorpe for Your Mark on the World, and I'm excited to have with us today a couple of great guests from CureCrowd, Dr. Charles Rocamboli, the founder, along with Tim So. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.
We're excited to be here.
Dr. Rocamboli, why don't you give us a little background here? What is CureCrowd?
Well, CureCrowd is a way to aggregate data outcomes. Now, ultimately, what we're trying to do is figure out what does and what does not work for ailments. Now, what we really want to do is incorporate both alternative and traditional treatments side by side to see what treatments are valid.
And how long has the site been running now?
We've been in beta since mid-March of this year.
What are some of the examples of the diseases and treatments that you are monitoring so far?
What we're trying to do is figure out what does and what does not work for ailments. Are you getting this playback?
I think one of you is probably listening to our interview, and you need to just close that window on your computer.
I got it.
Appreciate your enthusiasm, gentlemen.
Well, so far we've done a couple pilot studies on anxiety and depression, and some things that we found that are interesting are how well physical activities work for those things. And there is some data out there stating that physical activity is great for depression. But what we've done, which is unique, is put that side by side versus things like Prozac and Celexa and Zoloft. And you can actually compare the two in a single study.
And what are the outcomes that you're seeing in this data?
So far, I mean, the data is not big, which is really something that gives data power. Okay, but so far what we're seeing is that activities are more effective than these SSRI treatments. And what we really like to find out is how well certain herbal treatments like St. John's wort, which there is small pilot studies that say that it's as effective as Prozac with less side effect, but we want to put it into a large study so we could actually see genuinely how well it works.
Right. And are you using a scientific approach? It sounds to me like the very nature of the way you're gathering data here is we're not doing a new double-blind, placebo-controlled study. Rather, we're gathering reports across a population, self-reported data. So how do you make sense of this?
Right. Well, and that's a great question, and it does go to some of the fundamental principles of what we are and what we're trying to do. Double-blinded, placebo-controlled studies are a way to check one single medication. Now, what people don't realize is that the reason why you check everything against placebo is because you have to check it against something, because people get better. You know, people's depression just resolves without any treatment. So you have to compare your treatment versus something. Now, if you're going to go to the FDA and compare it to a known medication, okay, it is more likely, or it is increasingly likely, that your medication might not be superior to that accepted known drug. So you compare everything to a placebo. Okay, because it's going to give you the most likely increased outcome. Okay,
right.
So what we end up with this huge array of all these medications compared to a placebo. Now, people also think this placebo is a steady, even baseline, but it's not. Placebo studies change depending on every study that's done, so it's a very variable baseline. So what we're trying to do is really antiquate that approach, because head-to-head studies are more valuable. It's been done in chemotherapy because it seems to be unethical to give someone a placebo when someone has cancer. So you check the new medication compared to the old medication, and or compared to the old medication plus your new medication. So even the FDA recognizes the fact that this is not a requisite to show that something works. And we certainly don't believe so. What we need is big numbers. Because at some point, you're going to have a baseline. If you have 50 different treatments or 75 different treatments, you're going to have a baseline, and you're going to have standouts, irrespective of where that baseline or where that placebo effect would wind up.
So you've started with some of the, I think you said depression was one of the things that you've looked at early on, and you're able then to compare St. John's wort to Prozac and some of the other treatments. What are the early signals that you're getting back from the crowd on this?
Well, one thing that I find particularly exciting is how well blocked all these SSRIs or all these medications that have the same mechanism are to one another. If you look at Zoloft versus Celexa versus Prozac on our study, they scored almost identical, which to us is proof of concept that this works. You know, we just need more data.
Yeah. So you really do need vast amounts of data. How much does it cost for someone to engage with you and provide their feedback on their treatments?
Right. No, it's absolutely free. You know, we're designed as a public resource. We're simply approaching this thing with the concept of let's figure out what works, and let's get feedback from our patient population to get those answers. And especially with things like depression and anxiety, they're all survey-based studies anyway. It's all self-reported information, so it's particularly valuable for our site.
Yeah. What are the range of things that you might cover in the future?
We're willing to do anything. We have no problems really engaging in any type of ailment. Now, there are limitations that we have to understand. Certainly, preventative medicine can be difficult because you need multiple data points. I did see another product that was trying to do something along the lines that we're doing, not really very close, but close enough that they're getting some feedback, and they tried to do a preventative medicine study, which to me is a flaw, because you need too many data points from the same person in order to be able to do one of those studies. So that's something we're trying to stay away from at the time. But certainly diseases that don't have a great range of therapy options are excellent candidates for us.
Yeah. Well, Tim, why don't you give us an idea of how a person might use the site, from landing to self-reporting to then trying to discover lessons. You know, if you're trying to figure out how to what's working and what's not. Walk us through kind of how the user experience.
Sure. So from right on the homepage, we have a search bar that they can type in, let's say, a headache, and when they search for a headache, it'll take them to a graph, and they'll be presented with a visual representation of what treatments work, how effective they are, and then they can use a handful of filters to filter out, you know, data points that have maybe one or two surveys done on it. The survey is very, very simple. It's a three question survey, and it goes right onto the graph live.
Very cool. And so people can use this very quickly as a way to find out what's working for other people, so that they can ultimately choose the same treatments.
Absolutely.
I guess, Dr. Rocamboli, what works for one won't necessarily work for others, but what works for one often works for many others. Is that true?
I mean, absolutely, and we're getting to the point of big data, and what we are is basically a big data company for the masses. You know, we're trying to aggregate everybody's outcomes and let the next guy that has that disease try to make a logical, reasonable decision with their physician to help them get better. One thing we do like to point out is the fact that we are in no way a replacement for physicians or accepted medicine. What we are is a bridge of conversation between you and your doctor once you have a diagnosis, to find a therapy that you find palatable and that you hope will be efficacious.
I hate to ask such an impertinent question, but what's your revenue model? How do you hope to generate income for this business?
I mean, that's becoming a bigger and bigger question as we expand. There are certainly ways to make money with this. We have a coding system. We're going to try and allow people to engage with their own patients to a certain degree, which can generate revenue. There's money to be made by follow-up with patients, if they'll let us. But right now, we're really trying to focus on a product that has validity to the larger crowd.
And that's going to require scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to require scale. It's going to require funding, for sure.
So how many people have logged on and responded already to at least one survey?
We have over 600 users right now.
Okay, so that's certainly a running start. But really, you probably need tens of thousands or millions ultimately
Absolutely.
to really provide the kinds of meaningful data you'd like.
Absolutely. The bigger the better. Certainly with something when you're dealing with big data, the more people you have, the more targeted your information is. And what we really like about ours is as pathology starts to expand, meaning it's one thing if people say they have skin cancer, it's another thing if people say they have melanoma, it's another thing if they have superficial spreading melanoma. The more people know about their own disease, the more the pathology about those diseases expands, the more our data can expand as well and really focus in on what a patient has and what the best treatments are. Because currently, when the pathology expands, it's a slow process to get people to use a new therapy or a new treatment for something. With our system, it's as fast as people enter the information.
That's wild. Well, this is really an exciting advance forward, and I really hope that you'll be successful in gathering a large crowd around this, because we all want the answers that come from massive amounts of data, don't we?
Absolutely. A lot of people think the future holds all the answers, but we think that a lot of the answers are already out there. We just need to figure out what treatments work for what problems.
And this really gets at healthcare costs too, doesn't it? Because if a free treatment, like going for a walk every day for 20 minutes outside in the sunshine, is just as effective as a medication, or if a 20-year-old generic is just as effective as a brand new prescription, it would seem to me we want to know that stuff, right?
Well, I mean, now you're getting to the disruptiveness of our disruptive technology, and absolutely, that can be a huge cost savings. Unnecessary surgeries. People come in and they request surgeries, thinking that it's like changing a muffler, and they don't realize that a lot of surgeries, like going in there with a thing of duct tape and some glue and trying to place things back together, and certain surgeries patients don't do well. So I think it could, on some level, cut down on unnecessary surgeries, or certainly modify surgical techniques and allow people to use some of these less expensive options that are equally, if not more, efficacious in certain circumstances. In other circumstances, it may require these very expensive medications. In fact, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about a drug that is approved for cancer, and they want to use it for MS. Okay, but in order to get that new indication, the pharmaceutical company has to do like $100 to $200 million study, okay, just to get that additional indication. Now, the way the law is right now, a physician can prescribe any medication for any reason they want. That's off-label use. Okay, you don't have to give it for the indication. In fact, 1 out of 5 medications that's prescribed is prescribed for off-label. Now, with that in mind, if enough people use this chemotherapeutic, doctors prescribed it, and they gave their data back to us, or just to CureCrowd, a physician would be justified in giving this chemotherapeutic for MS and completely circumvent the FDA approval process for additional indications. The original study was done, and again, it's already FDA approved, so when you get something FDA approved, you have to prove safety first. That's your phase 1. Okay, so it's already been proved or deemed safe. It's just whether or not it works for this new product, and you know, it's become a tremendous problem. We do believe we have a solution for it.
Now, but again, circles back to you need big data. You need a lot of people to watch this video and then go to your website and start reporting on their conditions, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to have to change and grow and expand and do all everything on our end correct. And we're setting up the team to do that.
Well, this could be a great source for doctors and patients to help the world figure out how to improve healthcare. So, Dr. Rocamboli, Tim, I thank you very much for the time you spent with us today. Remind us now, Tim, where do people go to learn more about CureCrowd?
CureCrowd.com.
Okay, let's do that. All righty, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All righty, let's do some good.